Hey, it's Scott Petrak with another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. The season is over for the Browns, but the news and coverage don't stop. Jim Schwartz was hired as defensive coordinator after a quick search, bringing a lot of experience and an intense personality. Here to discuss that, the playoffs, and more is Dave Chudowsky of the WKYC Morning News. Hey, Chud.
Scott, may the Schwartz be with you.
How about that, huh?
I had to. I know it. That's terrible. I've heard a bunch of people do it, but everyone at work was doing it, so I thought I would join in. But yeah, what do you think? I mean, I think that's, if I remember correctly, that's the guy you wanted, right? I mean, you were all about that.
Yeah, it seemed to make the most sense to me for a few reasons. One, he's got the most experience, and not that that's the end all be all, but I think it does mean something. Been a head coach, which I think is always valuable to have on your staff, especially when your head coach is young, and Kevin Stefanski's still young age-wise and in the job, right? He's only been doing this for 3 years. He's been a coordinator a bunch on good teams, won a Super Bowl as a coordinator with the Eagles after the 2017 season, and he runs a 4-3. And the rest of the guys that they interviewed, Brian Flores and Sean Desai and, Denard Wilson from the Eagles runs a 4-3, but those other two guys, they run a 3-4 or historically have run 3-4s, and somebody would have had to transition. Either the roster would have had to transition or the coach, which I think is more likely, would have had to transition. And not that that's, means you can't do it, but I think it's easier to say, okay, Jim Schwartz, you've been running a 4-3, you've been doing that for a long time. You're just going to continue to do that here with the personnel, the basic personnel that the Browns have, including Myles Garrett. He fits in a 4-3. So I think it makes sense for a lot of reasons, and the last of which, and this is not last on my list, it's just the last one I'm bringing up, is I think his personality is a good fit for Kevin Stefanski. And I think they would complement and contrast each other well, because we know that Stefanski's pretty even keel, right? Not that he doesn't ever show emotion or that he doesn't ever yell at guys, but that's not kind of the default with him. Where Jim Schwartz, if you talk to people who know him, you read about him, and it's fiery, yells at guys, yells at players in practice, points out their mistakes. While they're watching film, he's got this pointer that at least the Eagles, when he was with the Eagles, would talk about him singling guys out on film and then kind of pointing his laser pointer at him. The Eagles communication staff moved the reporters away from him when he first started in Philly because he was swearing at the players during practice. Like not swearing at them, but like his critiques and criticism would be full of expletives, and the reporters were treating it, so they moved the guy or the reporters kind of farther away. So I think that intensity and that fire is needed, on this defense, on this coaching staff, perhaps, especially when you contrast it with Joe Woods, who's pretty laid back, and the disciplinary problems that we've discussed, guys being benched for the start of games. What happened with Jadeveon Clowney at the end of the season? I think that the intensity will be welcome, maybe not by all the players, but I think it would be a welcome change.
Yeah, this is your last point there. This defense just needs a kick in the you-know-what, right?
Yeah.
And maybe this is the guy that can get it done. Is there any concern, though, about someone said to me yesterday, you're going to a guy who's been around for a long time, and he's just going to come in here, and I'm trying to figure out how to say this, but just like going back to not bringing in someone fresh, basically going to a guy that could be a little stale.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. He's 56. The other candidates were all, either high 30s, low 40s. I get that question. If Schwartz is as intense as he was when he was in Philly, which was only, a couple years ago, his last year in Philly was 2020. Then I don't think it's a problem. I think he still has the intensity. I assume he still has the drive. 56 isn't as old as it used to be, especially as you get older. So I don't think that's an issue, but it's worth keeping an eye on. If you had gone the other way and hired a guy like Sean Desai, who I did a bunch of research on him over the weekend and really was impressed by him. Super smart, was a professor and, on the professor track in college before he chose coaching. You could have sold that too, right? Brings young energy, on the, kind of on the rise, as opposed to Schwartz, who's been there. He's been a head coach. He's been a coordinator forever. But I think in this instance, given the situation the Browns defense was in last year, and given the relative inexperience, kind of on that defensive staff, but even when you throw in Kevin Stefanski, I think the Schwartz pick, at least on face value, to me, it makes a lot of sense. I think it checks a lot of boxes.
Who made the final call on this?
Yeah, the way the Browns talked about it last week, or when we talked to Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry after the season, it was all about Kevin Stefanski, right? Like the way it was portrayed was he fired Joe Woods, he's in charge of hiring the coordinator. It's Kevin Stefanski's quote in the initial release the team sent out. We're taping this Wednesday. Wednesday morning, the team sent out the official release announcing the hiring, and it was a Kevin Stefanski quote. So I think he had the most say. Now, I would never say that Andrew Berry and or Paul DePodesta weren't involved, weren't consulted, but I do think it's Kevin Stefanski has the final say. And that's certainly what the Browns want you to think.
Yeah. Any thought that a decision was made, not entirely, or it was the main factor, but maybe just looking over your shoulder, worried about bringing in a guy who could possibly take your job?
I don't think so, because, Schwartz would fit that category, right? I mean, he's been a head coach with the Lions.
That's what
around.
I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously it didn't bother Stefanski, right?
Yeah.
But you heard the same thing about Flores, right? Flores is a former head coach. If you brought him in, would that have been like the succession plan, right? Succession plan, not secession. They're not seceding from the union. The succession plan. Now, I get that thought from outside. I don't think Kevin Stefanski thinks like that. I don't think you can afford to think like that. Maybe organizationally, you feel like, hey, it's good that there is a backup plan if something goes haywire. But I don't think that was a driving force. And obviously it wasn't a big concern for Stefanski, because if it was, then it would have led him to probably hire Denard Wilson or Sean Desai, because those two guys haven't been head coaches and feel like you get an up-and-comer versus an established person like Jim Schwartz.
I guess maybe I was hearing maybe there was concern about Flores in that regard.
Yeah, well, I think Flores, I think you heard it more when the discussion was about Flores, given his recent head coaching experience with the Dolphins. I think a lot of people expect him to become a head coach again. So I get that question, but, I think Schwartz kind of falls into that too. Like, you could make a move, if you go playing worst case scenario, if the Haslam's fired Kevin Stefanski after 6 games next year, it would probably be Jim Schwartz to take over. So I don't know if this hire saves Stefanski from kind of that worst case scenario.
Without getting into each of the games last weekend, we'll end the podcast with that. But just, I always kind of know where I feel like the Browns stand when I watch Sunday Night Football, because that's usually the best of the best every week, right?
Yep.
So obviously you have that same barometer and watching the super wild card weekend. So basically my question to you is, how close are the Browns, or how far away are they from being a team that could play in the super wild card, watching those games? I mean, do you feel like they're close to being at that level, or not really?
I find this a fascinating subject, Chud. And I do. And I get asked this, from buddies and other things. I don't think they're as far away as some people think. And just, you go through Twitter, oh my gosh, the Browns aren't in this league. It doesn't feel that way to me. And I get it. I get that you watch the games and it's, oh, this team looks so good. But outside of probably San Francisco, there were a lot of close games, right? There were a lot of games that it felt like this game could swing either way. From Miami to Buffalo, obviously Baltimore to Cincinnati. And like I could envision the Browns being in a close game this weekend without having to make a big leap. Now, I guess the one leap I would make is that Deshaun Watson is playing like a top 10 quarterback, right? Because if you have that, and you have Nick Chubb, and you have Amari Cooper, and you have David Njoku, and you have the offensive line, and you have Myles Garrett, and you get Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome II and Martin Emerson Jr., all of a sudden it feels like there's pieces there. Now, I'm not pretending that the Browns this year played at a level close to Kansas City or Buffalo or even Cincinnati. What I'm saying is if Deshaun Watson plays at a high level, then I think that raises everyone else. I think the mistakes or the weaknesses that feel so obvious after losses don't seem as big because you won the game and you scored a lot of points and he covered up for mistake A, B, and C, right? So I think that's the formula. And I think just from a general roster standpoint, like, you know, you watch these games and, okay, well, that guy's not great for the Cowboys, or, you know, Tampa Bay can't move the ball here. You know, I just think when we're so focused on the Browns, which is understandable, and I cover them and we talk about them and fans cheer for them, you see every weakness when they lose. It goes the other way too. Like when they win, it's everybody's great, and you know, I was gonna say left guard, but the left guard is one of the best players. You know, but like a random linebacker is so good when they win. Well, you know, maybe I think you overevaluate when there's team success, and I think you underestimate when there's team failure. So I'm not saying this is a perfect roster, but I do think my opinion is they are closer if Deshaun Watson is as good as they think he can be. Do you think I'm off base on that?
Well, yeah, I think it comes down to the quarterback. I mean, it really does. Most of the times, listen, we're going to see this when it gets to the AFC and NFC championship game, right? Like, let's say the Chiefs win. Either way, the Bengals or Bills,
right?
You're going to see elite quarterbacks there. If the Eagles win, I mean, Hurts has been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, that's typically what you see when you get to this point. So, yeah, I think they're elite. I don't know if it's elite, but they're the quarterback play away. That said, their defense, though, right. Their defense was such a problem this year. I think they're still far away defensively, but as far as they are away, I don't think it would take that much to fix. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the defensive coordinator change is huge, and Schwartz needs to prove that he can fix it and that he's got the right formula and that his message still works with guys. But let's assume that's a big upgrade from Joe Woods to Jim Schwartz. And then you add a defensive end, 2 defensive tackles, and you figure out what you want to do safety. You can kind of make a leap to, okay, well, these guys can be a competent defense, right? And then you expect your offense to make a jump. Now, I will say, and you trigger something in my head, Chud, is I think coaching is extremely important in the postseason. And overall, and I've supported Kevin Stefanski. I think the Browns should bring him back. But when you look at that Jacksonville game, right? Doug Peterson did a great job keeping his team in the right mind frame to come back and beat the Chargers when they're down 27 points, right? That's a great job coaching. I thought Mike McDaniel with the Dolphins being underhanded, having his 3rd string quarterback in, did a great job putting his team in a position to beat the Bills. Obviously, they didn't beat the Bills, but they were close at the end, and he put him in position. I know there were clock management mistakes at the end, but overall, his game plan and his approach, I thought, was pivotal to Miami being in that game when they were huge underdogs. And I think this coaching staff still needs to prove that to me. Now, they won a playoff game, right? They won a playoff game. They were in the game with the Chiefs, in 2020. But I still feel like I need to see that from this coaching staff, that they can have that kind of performance in the postseason.
Well, Stefanski was in the basement.
Right.
No, I'm kidding.
Right. But I mean, they won that game against the Steelers, and they deserve credit for that. But a bunch of stuff went their way, right? They competed in Kansas City, but it feels like that's a long time ago, right? It feels like this coaching staff hasn't been the same in the last couple of years.
And I'll take it even a step further. How about Harbaugh and the Ravens? I mean, no one thought that I mean, let's be honest, they almost won that game. I mean, that an incredible, bizarre play for the Bengals to win. Not saying that the Bengals wouldn't have come back to win even if the Ravens score there, but you know what I'm getting at. The bottom line is I'm going to take your point a step further. And how about culture? The Steelers and the Browns were in the same spot, and the Steelers almost made the playoffs. The Ravens had no business coming close to beating the Bengals with their injuries and the way they've been playing. But the Ravens and Steelers always find themselves to be right there, and the Browns just don't.
No, that's a perfect example. I think that's well said. I think it needs to be pointed out, and that goes beyond X's and O's and game plans, right? We focus so much on a particular Kevin Stefanski call or the Kevin Stefanski opening script and halftime adjustments, and all those things are important. But I think superseding that is you have a culture of winning, and that means when you're 2-6 like the Steelers, you finish 9-8. When you're the Ravens and you lose your quarterback for the second straight year down the stretch, you figure out a way to still get in the playoffs and compete, right? And I know a year ago that they didn't get into the playoffs, and they lost a bunch of games at the end, but they bounced back this year, faced with the same situation, and almost went into Cincinnati and won the game. So I think that's a great point, and I'm glad you brought up Harbaugh because I wondered if they would stay in that game, and obviously they did, and it comes down to that huge play, but that's a huge credit to John Harbaugh, and you can expect him always to have his team ready.
Yeah. All right, before we get to the picks, I just want to do something a little bit fun here. I teased this. That's in the TV business we call a tease, meaning we're teasing you that you're going to have to wait until later to hear the results. So we talked about this last week. But I just wanted to have a little bit of fun here with the Browns schedule looking back. And I'm doing this leading up to our talking about our picks from last week and picking ahead. And you and I both finished 9-8 picking the Browns. Is that right?
Yep.
Yes. So 9-8. Scott, let's do this real quick here. What was your what do you think was as far as picking goes, worst loss that you didn't see coming? I have two of them. What about you?
I'm going to go with the Patriots game, Judd. I went back and made sure I was right. I thought the Browns would win. I thought it'd be close. And they just weren't in the ball game. They just weren't. And it was a bad loss. It was 38-15 at home. And I should have given more credence to the Bill Belichick game planning. And they had the backup, right? It was Bailey Zappi playing quarterback.
Yeah.
The Browns devoted all the resources to stopping the run, and Zappi threw all over him. And then the Browns couldn't get anything going with the run game, and the Patriots made life really hard on Jacoby Brissett. So I think that's number one. I can't remember. I'm going to go look it up now. I think I picked them to beat the Dolphins coming out of the bye, and then they just were. It felt the same to me as that Patriots game. They were overwhelmed and they were outcoached.
Yeah, for me it was the Jets week 2. I just I thought they were going to win that game for sure. And they had it won, and the way it lost, it's just like, oh man, that just that crushed the Browns record, but it hurt our predicting record as well. And the other one is the Saints. I mean, I just with the Dome team coming up north, the way the Saints have been playing on the road, and I thought the Browns would win that game. Looking back at it, shouldn't be surprised, but those are my two, Jets and Saints.
Well, I thought of those two, Chud, and I think I would have used those for another category. I kind of blame the Browns for those games, right?
Okay,
the Browns, you know what I mean? The Browns should have won those games. So I feel less bad about those picks. The Patriots and Dolphins.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I got you. Okay.
Maybe I listened to your question incorrectly.
Well, no, you're right. I think as we go on, you'll be able to, and maybe we're just talking about different categories, but well, how about this? Let's go to picks I would like back, and I'll go first. And for me, picks I would like back is Falcons week 4 when I
Yep.
picked the Browns to win. I should have known better. I should have known that, they weren't a team that proved that they could go win a game like that, one that you'd think on the road at that time of the year. Uh, I just after the Falcons won, I'm like, yep, that's the Browns. I know we've been picking them for years and years and years, and I fell for it. And the other one, and this one, I'd like back because I think deep down I knew the Bengals were going to win, but I just wanted the Browns to win, so I went with the Browns in Week 14. So the two I'd like back are the Falcons and Bengals.
Yeah. I like the Falcons there. And maybe listening to you say that, that's when I want the Dolphins and Patriots. Right? I'm with you. I want those back because I should have known better.
There you go.
Right. Yes. I should have known better with the Patriots and the Dolphins. So having said that, to your first question, I'm with you with the Jets and the Saints. Like those games were the games that not only did it hurt because we predicted the other way and you felt like there was good reason for that. Those two games destroyed the Browns season, right?
Right.
And then I think the third game on there is probably Atlanta. We can argue if it's Atlanta or Chargers, but I think the ranking for me would be Jets, Saints, and then probably Atlanta, where you say, you talk to Joe Battoni after the year, and he talks about, hey, we were so many close games from being, where we needed to be in the playoffs at 10-7. And it's those 3 games. And it doesn't take much to flip those. And all of a sudden, we view everything differently, which we've talked about a ton. But the Jets game, obviously, right? In the Falcons game, and how many times did we talk at the beginning of the season? You got to stockpile the wins early because the schedule's getting harder, right? We probably should have known that there was going to be the rust factor with Deshaun Watson, that you needed to win those games early. And if they had beaten the Jets and beaten the Falcons, then they're right in the mix coming down the stretch, not even talking about the momentum that they would have had, right? Just from a pure record standpoint, they're right where they needed to be. And that game in Pittsburgh, it could be for a playoff spot.
Yeah, no doubt. So we're basically on the same page. You just had them flip-flop. So the picks you'd like to have back are the Dolphins and Patriots. That makes total sense. Yeah. So that's how I feel about the Falcons and Bengals. And then we're in agreement on worst loss, Jets and Saints. And as you said, I'm just repeating, the Saints ended their season technically with and the Jets. That's just a game that if you win that game, the whole season could have been different. So, all right. So we're on board. All right. How about, I'm going to save picks we're most proud of for last. I'm going to jump to no-brainer picks. And for me, it was week 13 beating the Texans 27-14. And then week 18, the Steelers beating the Browns 28-14. There was no doubt in my mind they were losing that game to Pittsburgh. And, had they lost to the Texans, that would have been the worst loss of the year. So those are my 2 no-brainers.
Yeah, I like the Texans. I never thought about picking Houston to win that game. I did think about Pittsburgh the last week. I thought about picking the Browns, kind of because I like Deshaun Watson in that quarterback matchup. And then they couldn't solve the Steelers defense. He and the Browns couldn't solve them. So the Houston to me was more of a no-brainer for myself. And, if I had to pick a second one, maybe that Carolina opener.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? Like, I felt like they were going to win that game, and I didn't feel it was going to be as close as it wound up. Obviously, you need the K-Dork 58-yarder to win it. I thought the Browns would go down there and handle business.
Yeah, that's a good one. I wrote that down in my notes. Week 1 Panthers, because I picked the Browns based on their always losing week 1. And then week 15 against the Ravens was another one. I think we both picked them to beat the Ravens. And then that was another one in there. But yeah, good points. Good points. There was just I never considered the Texans, and I don't think I considered the Steelers. I guess, or the Browns beating the Steelers. Right. I guess I wouldn't have been like completely astonished or shocked if the Browns won, but I felt pretty comfortable with Steelers there. So those were the 2 no-brainers. All right, picks that we're most proud of. You want to go first or second?
I'll go first because it's at the front of my mind. I'll go two. One, I liked that I got the first. Oh, I think I got both Bengals games right, actually. So I'll celebrate that because I remember the first week against the Bengals. You said, "Hey, maybe you got the first one right." But anyway, I think I got both Bengals games right. And I had some doubts about both those. And then the biggest one for me was that first Ravens game. I got the score exactly right. We talked about it. Call it a noser.
Oh, yeah.
So I got the right score, so you can't do better than that.
No. Yeah, that's right. That was the one they beat the Ravens, right?
No, that when they lost in Baltimore, 23-20. Yeah.
Oh, when they lost 23-20.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, no. All right.
I remember whatever that is, week 7. I remember being in the interview room waiting, and that's when we were talking about it. I was telling like Tony Grossi, "Hey, I got the noser." And then that's when the Browns started screaming at each other in the locker room. Like we could hear them screaming. I was like, "Uh-oh." But I was celebrating a little bit before the screaming started.
Okay, that's right. So that was the one you got right on. So you got the one they lost right on. Week 15 was when they beat the Ravens.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So we didn't see the beating the Ravens coming. That was a shocker. That I did not really see that coming week 15. That's right. I think you were on board. Weren't you on board there? I don't think you picked the Browns to beat the Ravens the second time, did you?
I think I might have gotten that one right, Chad. I think that might have kept me from falling behind that one.
Okay. All right. Well, you should be proud of that too. But yeah, hitting the one. I mean, think about this. Every game all year, and only one exact score. I remember saying that. It doesn't happen often.
It doesn't. It's really hard.
Yeah, it's so hard.
I mean, I've been picking games for almost 20 years, and I think it might have happened twice. Maybe like that, I mean, I'm sure there's, gambling experts that probably would have more success, but to me, it's really hard. It's hard enough to get the pick correct, let alone, let alone it on the nose, right? You just need a lot of stuff to go your way is part of it. Too.
Yeah. No. I think I've only done it twice. I think on TV, and I can remember one for sure, and maybe twice. But
yeah,
right.
I just checked. You're all right. I picked the Ravens to win the Week 15 too, so I got that one wrong. You're right about that.
Okay. All right. I thought so because I thought we were pretty much neck and neck. The last few games we did the same. All right, picks I'm most proud of. In no certain order, and I'm not proud of this because they lost, but week 6, New England. I remember you and I just adamantly were opposed on that, and I told you I was not going to fall for it. That's where I learned my lesson in Atlanta, right? So I just followed up with that, and just I thought they'd get out coached, and they did, and so that New England game falls in one you'd like to have back. For me, it's one I'm most proud of, just because it pretty much I didn't waver really. I just thought I didn't feel good about the Browns there. The Tampa Bay game, I think we both got that one right.
That was a harder one to pick, but I think we did get it right too.
The Tampa Bay game was not easy, and we got that right, so I feel good about that. But maybe my favorite was Washington because I think a lot of people thought the Commanders were going to win that game, and the Browns went on the road and got it done, and that was after the Saints game, right?
Yeah, they bounced back with quote unquote meaningless game, and they played well. Yeah, so you read that situation right.
Yeah, and you had it too.
Yeah, we got it both. Yeah, we both had it.
Yeah, we both. So those are the three. Anyway, I thought it was fun to kind of go down memory lane there and just break down the season. So there you have it.
Yeah, all right, it's amazing the stuff you remember and forget. Just because all the games pile up.
You're so right. You got to kind of go back and refresh. All right. Wow. Boy, did I not do well last week. Oh my gosh. We basically felt comfortable with 3 games, and we thought 3 games could go either way to a degree. You ended up going 5-1, man. You should have gone 6-0.
Yeah, that was just the winners because I did not. I think I went 2-4 with the spread and took a little bit of grief on Twitter because I was putting out the picks. But for winners, I'll take that right. And the Chargers. How do you let that game get away? Oh my gosh.
I did terrible on the spread as well. But I mean, you should. Hey, you got 5 out of 6, right? That's good. The Chargers. I mean, listen, that's unbelievable. You know what? The Chargers are going to charge, right? I mean,
Well, and like it just doesn't make sense to me because I think that Brandon Staley, like I think he's crazy smart. I love listening to him. He's open with the media, which probably has an impact on how I think of him as a coach. But like there's a lot of things to like about this guy. He's a young guy. He's only in his second year. I love Herbert, but to not be able to hang on in that game, it's mind-boggling that they couldn't do it. It just is.
yeah. Well, I had the Bills winning. I had the 49ers winning. I had the Bengals winning. Obviously, you did too. I I thought the Chargers were going to win. What can I say? I have no excuse on that. The Vikings Giants, I should have known better. I like the Giants early in the week, but I know in our conversation, but then something clicked and I'm like, I'm going Vikings. They're going to blow it later in the playoffs. You got that one right. Good for you with the Giants. But that one just destroyed me. Minnesota. I had them in a bet I do with my friends, and that I regret that one. I should have known better. And then the Monday night game, I have no problem admitting that I went Tampa Bay, and I thought I picked Tampa Bay for 2 reasons. I was still giving Brady the factor, and I just thought the Cowboys were going to blow it. They have not impressed me towards the end of the year, so I was wrong on that. And good for them. And the Cowboys move on. I still don't buy into them, but they move on, and Brady's gone. So I went 3-3. So there you have it.
That Monday night game, that was something else, Chud, because I think we talked about it a little bit last week. I watched a bunch of I did that last week too. A bunch of Buccaneers games. I can't get Tom Brady out of New England. A bunch of Tampa Bay games, and they never were explosive offensively. We watched them play the Browns, and they weren't explosive. But in the back of my mind, I was worried that Brady would figure it out and beat the Cowboys, right? Like that was the concern after having picked Dallas. But watching that game just reinforced everything I saw throughout the season. Is that Tampa's just not good. They're not good offensively. I think I don't know if they've officially decided to change coordinators, but it certainly looks like they need a new coordinator. There's just nothing explosive, original about that offense. And it showed up, and Dallas played well, right? Dallas did play well, and Dak Prescott protected the ball. But the key is that Tampa just can't score. And if you can't score, it doesn't matter what you're doing, who you're playing.
Well, I think anytime you fail in life, and I failed in those 2 games, I'm not going to take the Chargers as a failure. They were up 27-0. They should have won.
Right.
I'm not going to take that. But here's what I'm going to take my failure and learn, and just realize that was more for me. That was more about the Vikings and the Chargers doing what they always do, and the Cowboys, Tampa. I don't really have an excuse really there. So, but I will say that I learned a lesson that I probably should have just taken the better team. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I mean, I don't think there's any shame in trusting Tom Brady. This was a wrong year to do it.
Yeah. All right. So we move on to the next 4 games, as we have 2 games on Saturday and 2 games on Sunday. So the first game is the Jags at the Chiefs, and that is on Cheap Plug, Channel 3, NBC. Yeah. And that will be the first game, 4:30. And Kansas City, I've seen a couple different, but I've seen spread at 9, KC by 9. So I'll let you go first on this one.
I'm going Kansas City, and I think they win big. Trevor Lawrence really impressed me with how he bounced back from not only the interceptions in the first half, right, which just could have sent the normal quarterback into a tailspin. And the fact that he was able to recover, I think, speaks volumes for him in his future. And not on top of that, he didn't play well the previous week when they beat the Titans to make the playoffs. So I thought that was really impressive for him to lead the comeback that he did. Having said that, I just think Kansas City's too good. I think Patrick Mahomes is too good. They're used to playing after a bye. That crowd is unbelievable in Kansas City. So I'm going to take the Chiefs, and I'm taking them to win big.
Yeah. So you would not take the 9.
I would not. And now I will say I think I went 2-4 against the spread. So nobody should use these as any kind of basis for any serious gambling. But I like the Chiefs, and that's a lot of points to give, and I get the hesitancy given how close the wild card games were. Right? I don't know. I mean, San Francisco was the only one that ran away.
And they were losing.
And they were losing at one point, right? And I got that one wrong because I thought Seattle would keep it close. But even given that, I just like Kansas City too much.
Yeah. Oh man, it made me think of the Chargers game again and how that I still can't believe that when you said Seattle, you thought Seattle would keep it close. I thought I don't know why, this unbelievable. All right. Anyway, sorry, lost track of the thought there, but I agree. I think a lot of people, and again, I please do not follow along with us, because obviously if you're going to bet money, listen, there are moments where we do well, and you should follow along with us, right, and you'd make money. But no, I think a lot of people are going to take the Jags plus the 9. I think they're going to fall for the trap. And listen, the Jags playing at home against the Chargers is a lot different than going on the road against the Chiefs for all the reasons you mentioned. So I'm going Kansas City, and I'm keeping track of our records with just wins and losses, not necessarily the points. But if I had to do it, I would take the Chiefs and lay the 9 as well. So we're on the exact same page there. Giants and Eagles is the Saturday night game, 8:15. Got Philly 7.5. What do you think?
I think, first of all, good for Brian Daboll for what he's done with the Giants in his first year, getting that playoff win on the road. I really enjoyed working with him when he was coordinator with the Browns. I knew he took a lot of grief, a lot of criticism, and I think it was tough working under Eric Mangini. And not that Daboll was great here as a coordinator, but I think he's really grown since he left Cleveland, went and worked with Nick Saban, went back and worked with Belichick for a while. And he's really he's changed that team, changed that organization, changed Daniel Jones, the quarterback. So good for him. And I'm going to take the Giants plus the points. I think the Eagles win. I think they're more talented. I think they have the better quarterback in Hurts, and he looks like he's healthy. He's not on the injury report this week after having that shoulder injury at the end of the regular season. But those teams are really familiar with each other. It's the third time they're playing. I think Daboll and the Giants figure out a way to keep it close. I think Daniel Jones played really well against the Vikings. He's got that run threat that is tough for most defenses to handle. So given all that, I think they keep it close, but the Eagles win. But I would take the Giants plus the points.
Yeah. If you want, we can send a copy of this to Daboll. Maybe he'll get you some tickets or jersey or something for talking so nice about. Yeah, I'm going to take Philly to win. But you're right, Daniel Jones, Vikings did not have an answer for him. Every time they needed a first down or something, that he was able to get it done. But I think it ends for the Giants. I think the Eagles win the game, and I think it's going to be close. But I think the Eagles have covering. So I'm going to agree with you on that. But I wouldn't be shocked either. To me, that's the line of the 4.
Yeah.
Unless the Jags come out and completely.
And had a little technical difficulty there, Scott, but I just feel like this is probably the most difficult when it comes to the spread. But I'll go Eagles. You'll go Giants when it comes to the spread. But so far we both have Chiefs and Eagles. So let's go to Sunday now. Bengals, Bills by 4.5, 3:00 start on Sunday. This is the game that we never got to see for obvious reasons. So here we go.
Gosh, to me, this is the toughest one, Chud. I I'm struggling with this. I continue to struggle with it. And I think the reason I'm struggling so much is I didn't think either team played exceptionally well in the wild card round, right? So that leaves kind of a funky impression, right? Like, man, both teams are vulnerable. I think it's easier for me to dismiss the Bengals Ravens game because they're so familiar. They play 3 times a year. And I know so does Miami, right? Buffalo, Miami do too. But, we all know from watching the Browns how tough it is to play the Ravens and what a battle that is. So the fact that they kind of held the Bengals in check isn't a super surprise. My worry with the Bills is Josh Allen's turning the ball over a lot, and that can come back to bite you in the playoffs, right? They felt like they kept the Dolphins in the game after getting off to a really good start. So I think this is a tough one. I think it's going to be a great game. Man, I'm so torn. I'm going to go Bills, and I don't know if they cover. I'd probably take the Bengals plus 4.5 because I think it's going to be that kind of a game.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I think I could make an argument Cincinnati wins. I can argument Buffalo wins. I'll give the nod to Buffalo because it's at home. So I'm going to take Buffalo, and I think it'll be a good game, but I think it's a really tough one to pick.
Well, and everyone probably wants to see that neutral site AFC Championship game, right? With the Bills and.
How do you feel about that? Like, to me, that kind of rubs me the wrong way. I like the idea of playing in somebody's stadium.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's just the NFL was throwing a curveball and they didn't know what to do, and this was the best scenario. I don't like the neutral site. I definitely hope that they don't find this as a positive with like ratings and like attendance. I don't know if it does happen, because you're right. The team that's the number 1 seed that fought all year deserves to get home field.
Agreed.
And I think that's, unless they change the rule and everyone knows from the start, hey, you get home field up until a certain point. I don't know. But I definitely, I'm with you.
Yeah. I mean, you're right about this year. Like, I understand that this year was completely different because of the canceled game. But now you're hearing, oh man, what if they just make the championship games neutral site? I hate that idea because then I don't know what you're playing for. Then your number 1 seed you would get to buy, so there is incentive there. But I don't know. I mean, you know how you'd feel as a fan if you're thinking that you're going to go to that game, or you've always thought, man, what if we get to go to a championship game, right? We remember how that Browns game and the drive game, how exciting that was. To have that taken away because the NFL can make more money. Obviously, it would follow, right? It would follow for how the NFL operates, but I think it's a bad idea.
Well, they could come out with the argument of the Super Bowls in a neutral site.
Sure, but AFC and NFC, like, those are apples and oranges. Like, this is the AFC, you play for home field advantage. I could see it completely moving that way, but I don't like it.
Yeah, no, I agree. So this is the toughest game, I think, to pick the winner.
Okay.
I was looking at Eagles Giants because of the amount of points.
Sure.
Because I think if you think the Bengals win the game, you obviously get the points. Now, if you think the Bills are going to win, you're in a little tight spot because like you said, you think it's going to be a field goal. So I love this game. I was hoping we'd see it. And I'm going to go with this team, and I'm going to go with it because I'm going to go with one guy, Joe Burrow. And I just think that the Bengals have the attitude, and I know they struggled and barely got lucky to beat the Ravens, I guess maybe you could say. But I just think that, man, Burrow is just one of those guys that I think he just puts a team on his back and wins a game like this. And you know what? I love Josh Allen. I do. He's my fantasy quarterback. I love watching him play. But I have to be honest, I don't think he's been as great since he kind of had that injury in the middle of the year.
Yeah.
A lot of turnovers last week. I think I have not seen him put a dagger in someone's heart yet. And I've seen Burrow do it. I've seen other quarterbacks do it. And until I see it, you know how I am.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go Burrow. I think they can win on the road. I know that's a tough place to play, but the Bills have a history of not getting it done. Just my gut is pointing to the Bengals. Would I put $1 million on it? Hell no. But I'm gonna go Bengals, and then obviously I take the points.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
you listen. Neither of us, we both agree it could go either way.
Yeah, I think you make good points. The thing that worries me about the Bengals is their offensive line is beat up, right? And it was always questionable to begin with, and now it's beat up. Having said that, the Bills, without Von Miller, don't have the same pass rush. So I think that was part of each of those games last week. And maybe they neutralize each other, so maybe Burrow does have time and is able to make the big plays like you think. And I think that's completely possible. And you're right about Allen since that injury. It's tough because we watched both of them play so well in the playoffs last year, right? Allen should have won in Kansas City, and Burrow did win in Kansas City, right? So I think that's what makes it so tough to pick.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you that I'm not going to get into a debate of who's a better quarterback because I think they're both great.
Yep.
But if there's one guy, if you had to pick one guy that will make a mistake to cost the game, which one would you pick?
Yeah, I'd pick Josh Allen. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also might pick him as the guy to make the play to win the game. Whether that's with the bigger arm and the ability to run. Not, Burrow has both those. Burrow's got a really good arm and he's got, he can extend plays, but Allen does it at another level. Allen might have the strongest arm in the league, and when they want to run him, they can run him, and he can have a huge impact, right?
Yeah. No, trust me. I mean, honestly, it's hard for me to pick between the two. We could talk about this forever. I mean, they're both amazing. I'd love to have them both on the Browns, no doubt. Cowboys, Niners. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going Niners, and I'm going to go Niners -3.5.
Yeah, I get it. I'm going to go the other way, and part of that's because last week, yes, who we thought would go to the Super Bowl, and I think I picked the Cowboys, so it's hard to get off that when they're still playing. I think it's tough, the quick turnaround, Monday night to Sunday night, and the Niners have from Saturday to Sunday, so I think that helps. The Cowboys have to travel to, Northern California, Santa Clara. Having said that, I don't think it's a crazy pick to pick the Cowboys. If Dak doesn't turn it over, if Dak plays like he did against Tampa Bay, Dallas has a chance. Dallas has those two running backs. They, theoretically can control the ball on the ground a little bit. I know how well Brock Purdy played, and I know what the numbers were, and I know his second half. I think he might have had a perfect quarterback rating. There were plays early in the game that I thought he showed vulnerabilities, and maybe that was just first playoff game jitters, but he's still a rookie quarterback. It's still high pressure. If Dallas can score, then you're asking the Niners to match scores, and maybe it gets into a situation where he has to throw the ball, and that's not what they want to do, right? They want to run the ball and throw off play action. If he's dropping back and he's going to throw, that's tough. Micah Parsons can change a game with some big plays. Maybe Diggs gets a pick, right? Now, he could also give up a big play, but he could get a pick that could change a game. I think there's reasons to think that the Cowboys can go in there and win. I thought the spread would be and should be bigger than 3.5, and that might just be because everybody in the world likes to bet the Cowboys, so it doesn't go that high. But I'm going to take the Cowboys to cover, and I'm going to take them to win just because I said they go to the Super Bowl, and I think that's still a possibility. How they played against Tampa gives me even more belief there, even though San Francisco played great last week, and I would not be surprised if they won that game.
All right, so we have we agree on the Saturday games and we disagree on the Sunday games.
Yeah, how about that?
All right,
we'll
see what happens.
Cool. Well, thanks, Chud. Again, buddy, I enjoy this. I enjoy talking about the playoffs, and we had a little Browns news with Jim Schwartz. And just to recap that, I think it feels like a good hire, right? I think it does check a lot of boxes. And I just read somebody sent me an email, just a reader, how excited about the Schwartz hire. And I think anytime you can get a little bit of optimism, a little bit of excitement right after a disappointing season, I think that's good for the fan base. So we have Jim Schwartz, and then we have the playoffs, and we'll try to hook up next week and do a quick, who knows? We'll probably Brown stuff to talk about too, but do a quick championship preview because those could be some really good games.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been fun, no doubt.
Cool. Thank you, Chud. Again, as always, thanks everybody for listening. This has been another episode of the Zone Coverage Podcast, and you can read all my work at brownzone.com.